Companion planting is a practice that involves planting different crops together for mutual benefit. When properly implemented, companion planting can lead to healthier and more productive crops. I will go over companion plants for garlic, tomatoes, peppers, onions, okra, cucumbers, potatoes, brassicas, and asparagus. I will also talk about beneficial flowers and herbs, and believe it or not, some herbs need to stay away from certain vegetables. My backyard is all natural, and I stopped using pesticides and herbicides back in 2019 when I adopted my tortoise. Whenever it's nice and warm out, he roams the yard freely, eating on grass and weeds. Over just a few short years, I created a mini ecosystem in my own backyard, where there's an abundance of bird and insect life. I have huge earthworms in my raised beds and in my lawn. I even had a toad come for a visit. Here he is, Mr. Toad. So let's take a look at my two raised beds that are 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. I expanded the raised beds in the fall of 2021. I have an arched trellis that is connecting them, and most of my perennial vegetables grow here. The garden beds need to be rich in nutrients and very fertile to accommodate this type of high intensity planting that I will show you right here. Let's take a closer look at this raised bed. I have lavender that I grew from seed in this corner, and all of my lavender plants are in their 3rd year of growth. I have a perennial leafy green called sorrel. Sorrel is full of vitamin C and has a sour lemony flavor. I've been eating sorrel since I was a kid, and it's very popular in Europe. I started some more this year. And over here, a quarter of this bed is full of fall planted garlic. 3 varieties, the Nootka Rose Sopna garlic, and 2 hardneck varieties called Purple Stripe and German Extra Hardy. Garlic is a great companion for almost all vegetables except for asparagus, beans, parsley, peas, sage, and strawberries. Garlic will stunt the growth of these vegetables, and sage will hinder the garlic bulb development. Avoid planting legumes right after growing garlic or onions. Don't plant garlic next to other alliums because you could attract the allium maggot that will decimate your crop. I will grow beets and carrots along with garlic. Planting carrots right next to garlic and onions can protect your crop from that maggot. And alliums protect carrots from the carrot rust fly. Other vegetables that grow well with garlic and onions are cabbage, spinach, potatoes, tomatoes, kale, roses, and dill. You can also plant garlic around your fruit trees to prevent fungal diseases like the peach leaf curl and apple scab. After I pull garlic out in early July, I'm thinking of planting zucchini and yellow squash. Squash are heavy feeders and they require lots of nitrogen, so we'll have to amend the soil and fertilize. I want to point out the location of my raised beds. It's important to know what direction your raised beds are facing. Tall plants should be grown more towards the north or the east side so that they wouldn't shade other plants, unless you want to create shade for plants that like some afternoon shade. I'm going to plant a tomato in this corner, most likely a San Marzano, which is a semi-determinate, or the Rutgers VF, which is a determinate tomato. They don't grow very tall, and a tomato cage can easily support them. These tomatoes don't require constant pruning like the indeterminate tomatoes. Indeterminate tomatoes will grow up to 10 feet tall if you let them, and all of the suckers have to be removed so that it only has one main stalk, or two if you have space. Now let's talk about companion plants for tomatoes and peppers. Basil, borage, marigolds, nasturtiums, calendula, hyssop, onions, garlic, and other alliums, lettuce, carrots, okra, asparagus, parsley, peas, oregano, beets, or any other shallow-rooted vegetables. Basil repels insects like flies and hornworms. Some say it even enhances tomato flavor and improves tomato yield. Another herb that deters the tomato hornworm is borage. Borage is a perennial plant and bees love it. On this tall trellis, I will grow indeterminate tomatoes, yellow pear, and brandywine. These tomatoes can grow up to 10 feet tall. I've been growing cucumbers and smaller melons for years on this trellis, and now I have to make a change. Even if you are gardening in a small space, it's good to do a crop rotation once in a while. I'll plant basil and marigolds near tomatoes and borage in this corner. Last year, marigolds got away from me and took over the whole raised bed. I'll make sure to trim them this year. I will have peppers growing next to tomatoes this year. Peppers and tomatoes grow well together even though they're nightshades. They require the same nutrients, the same pollinators, and water needs. Tomatoes provide afternoon shade for peppers, and that prevents sun scald on peppers. The pepper varieties that I'm growing this year are yellow, red, green, and purple bell peppers. I will also be growing habanero, ghost, cayenne, big Jim chili, jalapeno, and banana peppers. Onions and garlic are great companions for tomatoes and peppers because they help deter aphids, Japanese beetles, cabbage loopers, spider mites, and other pests. Planting garlic next to tomatoes and peppers can prevent fungal diseases. You can plant lettuce and carrots next to tomatoes. However, carrots will have an improved flavor but stunted roots. So go for a shorter variety of carrots. Now the worst tomato and pepper companions. Those are brassicas, corn, fennel, kohlrabi, eggplant, potatoes, and dill. Always avoid growing same family vegetables in a large grouping. Over here, I'll be growing pickling cucumbers, and they will climb up a tomato cage and then wrap around on top of this chicken fence that surrounds the raised beds. The slicing cucumbers will grow on the trellis right here. The best companion plants for cucumbers are beans, corn, peas, lentils, oregano, borage, dill, marigolds and nasturtiums, radishes, and sunflowers. Sunflowers attract bumblebees and are great pollinators. Last year, I grew a sunflower in my lawn. I just dug up a hole, put some potting soil and fertilizer, and direct sowed. Never transplant them because the roots are very sensitive, and if you want to grow large sunflowers like the mammoth sunflower, which I love and been growing for many years, then you just have to direct sow them. However, when it started growing, a rabbit managed to snap off the top of the seedling, and I was devastated. But I left it growing, and after a week, it started growing new growth out of the two leaves that remained. Nature is so resilient. Predatory wasps are great in the garden, and the way to attract them is to plant several herbs, which are alyssum, dill, cilantro, and parsley. Predatory wasps control aphids, armyworms, hornworms, cabbage loopers, and all caterpillars. Plant sacrificial radishes around your garden to distract beetles from cucumbers, melons, and squash. Oregano is a great herb for repelling aphids and squash bugs. I always let a couple of radishes flower in my raised beds to attract hoverflies. They look like tiny bees. They are your spring warriors for aphids, thrips, leafhoppers, and other soft-bodied pests. Borage, once again, is great at deterring cabbage loopers, armyworms, and pesky wire worms away from cucumber plants. Sage, on the other hand, is a herb that will stunt cucumber growth. And don't plant any melons or squash next to cucumbers because they have the same diseases and pests. Potatoes and cucumbers don't grow well together because they are heavy feeders and will deplete the soil of nutrients. Dill is another great herb companion for cucumbers. It deters cabbage worms and aphids. Also helps attract beneficial insects and butterflies to your garden. I always grow dill in my garden and I let it go to seed. I love dill and I eat it raw like a rabbit. Dill is packed full of flavonoids that reduces the risk of heart disease and stroke. I will grow lots of dill this year for pickling cucumbers. I've been making fridge pickles for a couple years now, and now I want to try fermenting and canning. Dill is of the same family as celery, parsley, and carrots. If you grow carrots next to dill and you let the carrots flower and you collect their seeds, and then next year you plant those seeds and you might get dill flavored carrots. One thing to remember is plant dill next to cucumbers, but not next to tomatoes or peppers or other nightshades. As you see here on this map, dill is far away from any nightshades. Now let's see what I'll be growing in my other raised bed. I will have tomatoes on this side of the trellis also. Basil will be growing in between tomatoes and marigolds. And right here will be my asparagus patch. I decided to grow asparagus from seed instead of crowns because I want to document the whole growing process, which to me is pretty fascinating. It will take 3 years until I'm able to harvest asparagus. Maybe next year I'll harvest 1 or 2. I planted 8 seeds indoors and I will transplant them this spring and they will grow as tall fronds. The ones that will produce berries would have to be pulled out because those will be female asparagus and they will not produce as many asparagus as the male plants. So it will be very interesting to see how many of them will be female plants. The asparagus crowns from a greenhouse would be only male plants. Did you know that spinach has female and male plants? I discovered this last year when the spinach bolted and only female plants produced the seeds. So what can be planted next to asparagus? And the number one companion are tomatoes. Tomatoes emit solanine, a chemical that repels asparagus beetles. In turn, asparagus deters nematodes from tomato roots. Other herbs that deter the asparagus beetles are basil and parsley. Coriander, comfrey, and dill are particularly good at repelling spider mites. Other vegetables that grow well with asparagus are peppers, beets, radishes, and turnips, or any shallow root vegetables like lettuce, strawberries, and spinach. Parsley grows well with most vegetables. However, lettuce and mint don't make good neighbors with parsley. Never plant garlic or onions next to asparagus. That also includes potatoes. These vegetables are going to completely hinder the growth of asparagus. Here I will have my onion patch. I will grow shallow-rooted carrots right here called Tonda di Parigi. Onion companions are all brassicas, carrots, parsnips, beets, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and potatoes. Same as garlic, onions do not grow well with peas and beans, sage and asparagus. I'm going to plant okra in each raised bed, and before I tell you all the okra companions, I would like to tell you a funny little quick story about how I started growing okra in my garden. Around 2021, I started following Jess at Roots and Refuge Farm. In her vlogs, she would always mention how beautiful okra was and how much she loved it and how good it was for your gut. I was intrigued, but I never felt the need to grow it. In the spring, I purchased a seed packet of bunching onions, and the packet contained one random seed that I could not identify. However, having a curious nature, I planted the seed and it started growing. I tried to identify it as it grew, and I've never seen a seedling like that. So I went to my local greenhouse to look for similar plants, and lo and behold, there it was, okra. What a coincidence. Do you have any funny gardening stories like that? I would love to hear them. Put them in the comments below. Okra gets along with most vegetables and really doesn't have any bad companions. Planting basil near okra is beneficial because it repels flea beetles, stink bugs, spider mites, aphids, and whiteflies. To attract pollinators, plant zinnias, cosmos, and calendulas nearby. Okra is a tropical plant, same with cucumbers and melons. They grow best when soil temperature is at least 70 degrees, so don't transplant them too early. I'm expanding my growable area this year. I purchased two 50-gallon grow bags where I'm going to plant potatoes. I love potatoes, and I don't know who else loves potatoes more than me. Maybe Kevin at Epic Gardening, because he expressed many times how much he loves potatoes. Last year, I grew store-bought potatoes in a 10-gallon grow bag, and I was able to grow 2 pounds of potatoes. So this year, I will plant Yukon Gold seed potatoes. So let's talk about companion plants for potatoes. Planting garlic next to potatoes will deter Japanese beetles and prevent potato blight and potato scab, because garlic is a natural fungicide. Potatoes grow well with legumes, however, legumes don't get along with alliums. If I decide to grow peas or beans right next to potatoes instead of garlic, then the potatoes will be exposed to fungal diseases. Herbs that are good to grow next to potatoes are alyssum, yarrow, chamomile, basil, parsley, and sage. Potatoes also grow well with onions. Horseradish is believed to deter potato insects too. You can grow shallow-rooted vegetables like lettuce, spinach, and radishes. Bad companions for potatoes are brassicas, cucumbers and squash, carrots, asparagus, sunflowers, and fennel. The reason you don't see any brassicas in these raised beds is because I will grow all of them in grow bags this year. I've been growing kale, broccoli, and collard greens in these raised beds, and it's time to do a crop rotation. So what are the most important companion plants for brassicas? Aromatic herbs like dill, rosemary, basil, mint, garlic, and thyme. They help repel insects that munch on broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and cabbage. If you are growing broccoli, best companions are beets, lettuce, alliums, and celery. I hope that I have demonstrated the benefits of companion gardening and that I encouraged you to try companion gardening yourself. And please let me know in the comments if I missed something, because we learn from each other. Diversity in the garden is key to have a well-balanced ecosystem. Take care of your garden and it will take care of you. Thank you for watching. Until next time, my gardening friends.